Okay, here we are with Geometry and Data Interim 3 Review Study Guide, and this is Section 2, which is all about Units 1 and 2 repeat content. For problem number 1, in a parallelogram ABCD shown below, the bisectors of ABC and DCB meet at point E on AD. If the measure of D is twice the measure of A, label all angles in the parallelogram's interior. All right, well, I'd start by looking at the relationship. If D is twice the measure of A, well, if I call A X and D is twice that, I'm going to call D 2X. What I know about angles in a parallelogram, interior angles, is that angles that are adjacent or consecutive angles, I should say, are supplementary, which means they add to 180. So I know that x plus 2x has to be equal to 180 degrees. So if I combine like terms, I find out that angle x must be 60. So now that I know angle A is 60, I know angle D has to be 120. I also know in a parallelogram that opposite angles are congruent. So if angle D is 120, angle B is also 120, the entire angle B here, ABC. And I know if A is 60, then the angle opposite would be 60 as well. They've told me that line BE is a bisector of ABC, which means that this angle must be congruent to this angle. And that means it's the entire angle of 120 must be cut exactly in half. So this angle has to be 60 and this angle would be 60 as well. If I look across opposite from angle A, CE bisects BCD. So therefore the entire angle BCD has to be 60 degrees because it's opposite, but split exactly in half would make these 30 and 30. Now to find the remaining angles down here by vertex E, you have to keep in mind that in a parallelogram, opposite sides are parallel to each other. And if you think of line BE as a transversal cutting through two parallel lines, what we know is there's a relationship where alternate interior angles are congruent to each other. So therefore, angle BEA must also be 60 degrees. If you look down here on angle C, let's do this one in a different color. If you now think about CE cutting through the transversal, ignore the blue line this time, then what I can tell you is that alternate interior angles are congruent because this is, I'm looking at just the yellow line and the two pink lines. So if that makes angle CED equal to 30, because these two angles are congruent to each other, because they're alternate interior angles. Now, if I wanted to find this last remaining angle, I know that this is the AED is a straight angle, adds to 180. So if I subtract away the 30 and 60, I find out that this last remaining angle would be 90 degrees. All right, number 2. The line plot below shows the number of candy bars bought by 15 students. What is the median number of candy bars purchased? If I have a dot plot or line plot and I want to find the median, you're looking for the middle number. One strategy would be to write these numbers out. There's 1 0, 1 1, 1 2, there's 3 3s, or you can just start crossing out from right to left because essentially you're looking for the middle number. Okay, and now you see that I've worked my way right to left and I see that my middle number has to be 5. So the median would be 5 candy bars. Number 3, in the diagram below, lines A and B are parallel. Angle 5 is 40 degrees, and angle 7 is 125. Find all missing angle measures. So I'm assuming they're looking for the numbered angles. I know that if you keep in mind, when you have parallel lines cut by a transversal, you can only really focus on one transversal at a time. And I'm going to look at the first transversal, this one being line C that cuts through lines A and B. And I know if angle 5 is 40, I know angle 1 is also 40 because those are called corresponding angles. I also know that angle 4 has to be 40 as well, partly because they are alternate exterior angles and also it's a vertical angle to angle 1. So those have to be congruent to each other. Now what I'm going to do is look at the other transversal cutting through. This is line D, to see what other information I can find out. Well, I know that 7 and 8 are a linear pair, which means they have to add to 180 degrees. So if you subtract 125 from 180, you find out that angle 8 has to be 55. And angle 6 is also a linear pair to angle 7, and it's vertical to angle 8, so 6 would also be 55. There's a few ways you can find the last two remaining angles. One would be if you know angle 5 is 40, then its vertical angle here is 40. So 40 and 55 are two angles in a triangle. And if you subtract those two from 180, the third angle would be 85. And even though I didn't have to find that angle, it is a vertical angle to angle 3. So angle 3, therefore, would also be 85 degrees. And then to find the last remaining angle 2, I know that 6 and 2 are corresponding angles. So therefore, corresponding angles are congruent. 2 has to be 55 as well. There's a few different ways you could get to that same endpoint, but basically those are all the missing angles. Problem number 4 in the diagram below, I know that MQ is parallel to OP. Even though it may not look it on the diagram, we're going to go with what the words are telling us, that those two lines are parallel to each other, and they intersect at point N. The measure of M is 34 degrees. And M and O is 107. M and O is 107. So that's this angle right here. What is the measure of angle O? So this is the angle we're looking for. So here's where I would head with this. First of all, in order to solve this problem, we've got to figure out what's going on. I'm going to look at line MP as a transversal cutting my two blue lines, and I'm going to see that this 34-degree angle is an alternate interior angle to NPO. So if that angle is 34, then this one has to be 34 as well. If MNO is 107, well, I know it makes a linear pair, with ONP and also MNQ. So therefore, if I subtract 107 from 180, I find out that this angle here is 73. And these two angles are vertical angles, and they're both a linear pair with the 107, so this one also has to be 73. So now what I have is a situation where I have two similar triangles by angle-angle similarity. And what I'm essentially looking for is the third angle in a triangle. So what I would do from here is subtract 73 and 34 from 180 to find that third angle in the triangle. And this would be 73 degrees. Okay. On the next page, we have number 5. We have a diagram of triangle ABC DE is drawn. It's parallel to AC. AD is 4, EC is 6, BD is 8. What is the length of BC? So I'm looking for the whole length BC. How I'm going to solve this, and there's more than one way to do it, I'm going to solve for BE, and once I find BE, I'm going to add 6 to get my final answer. So because these lines are parallel, I can set up a proportion. 8 over 4 equals x over 6. You may see that there's a relationship of 8 is double 4, so therefore x would have to be 12. If you don't see it, you can use cross products. 4x equals 48, so x equals 12. Once you know what BE is, we solved for BE, we just add 6. So I know BE would have to be 18. Number 6, the scatter plot shows the average sales of ice cream in Connecticut in dollars when the temperature varies. So we're trying to find the difference in dollars between the actual average sale at 17 degrees. So the actual is going to be represented by the dot above the line. And we want to find out the difference between that and the amount predicted for 24 degrees. So the predictions are always the points on the line. That's what this line is. The line is predicting. So let's see. I see the actual sales at 17 looks like it's about $400. And the predicted at 24 looks like it might be about $580. If I'm reading that right. So I would take 580 minus 400, and I get the difference would be about $180. Okay. Number 7, you're given 2 studies, A and B, where both studies calculated the margin of error in the same way. Study A had a margin of error of plus or minus 5, and study B had a margin of error of plus or minus 3. Which study would you assume had a greater sample size? What we know is that the study that has a larger number of sample size, a bigger sample size, has a smaller margin of error. So I'm looking for the study B has a smaller margin of error, therefore it came from a greater sample size. Number 8, the frequency table shows the age of students on a school-sponsored field trip at HMTCA. Find the mean and median of the data. There's a couple ways you could do this, as just like all these problems. You could put 14 3 times into your list, 15 8 times, and so on, and calculate these using your calculator. Or you can just figure out, okay, if I have 3 people who are 14 years old and I multiplied those numbers, they would add to 42. 15 times 8 is 120. 16 times 7 is 112. 17 times 2 is 34. So altogether, their years add up to 308. And altogether, if I add the number of students in total, I have 20 students. So if I take 308 divided by the 20 students, I get a mean of 15.4. So this is my mean. And my median is the middle number. So from here, I would one strategy would be to count your numbers in from, or list them out. You can list 3 14s, 8 15s, and so on. Or you can just make your way. If there's 20 people, I know the middle number is going to be between 10 and 10. The 10 in from the bottom number and 10 in from the top number. So if I counted from the highest number down, this is 2 and 7 make 9. So that means the 10th number in from the right would have to be 8. And the 10th number in from the left would also have to be 8. So my median would be 8. Number 9, the graph displays the weight of a dog as its height increases throughout its lifetime. It asks me to interpret the slope of the equation. Well, first of all, I know the slope is the coefficient of the independent variable. So my slope here is 5.3. But the question is 5.3 what? And here's where, if you think about rise over run, I have my change in y, which is the weight over the height. So the dog is 5.3 pounds per inch.